Ankin Ma'at, Hotep, Ankin Jet. What's happening, world? It's Ahasa. It's Afrosynthesis, and we got another one today. We're gonna keep it quick, but we also gonna keep it godly, right? So, of course, we're talking about the realm of the divine, the realm of spirit, and we really want to just talk about what exactly is spirituality. As I was journeying, right, because my journey into spirit started as an intellectual one. And on that journey, I came across Professor James Smalls. And one of the quotes that he gave, which is very beautiful, is he says that culture is the expression of one's understanding of their divinity. I'm going to say that again. Culture is an expression of one's understanding of their divinity. I think that's beautiful because then when I'm asked, what is spirit or what is spirituality, right, I could really say spirituality is the deification of one's cultural understanding. And in that case, your cultural understanding should be your ability to see your purpose collectively and individually within the universal whole, right? We have an ecology, we have an economy, we have so many different cycles and communities that we live within. And so spirituality is one's way of maintaining alignment through the different persons, places, things that we can shift and move through. Spirituality is, when you look at the etymology of the word, right, you kind of have, in the 14th century English, they bring it to divine substance. They talk about spirit being our essential nature or quality. Spirit actually speaks to high character. And then, you move even further back, what you actually see is spirit is synonymous with life, with breath. It is the animating force of life. It's interesting, right? We have animate and inanimate objects. What's the difference between them? One has a spiritual essence imbued on top of it that's different than the others. That's not to say that inanimate objects have no spirit within them, because it's still matter, and matter, the lowest aspect of matter still has spiritual qualities because it's all spirit and essence. But I am spirit and matter simultaneously, knowing that, and can move purposefully as a result. And that's very different than what, say, this chair is that I, right, or someone of my quality could make. But that chair does not have the same quality and animate life and breath and force, right, as I. And so that's where spirit can be differentiated. But what we have to realize is that when we're talking spirit, when we're talking spirituality, we are talking about tapping into, communicating with, and having power in the unseen, right? That shouldn't sound scary. That shouldn't sound off-putting. That honestly shouldn't be surprising to many people, right? Because whether you consider yourself spiritual, religious or not, those who pray or speak to God, speak to Netter, most often do so with their eyes closed. And so you either unconsciously know, if you don't consciously realize, that spirit and spirituality and being spiritual means working with the unseen, right? And in Kemet, we call Amen the unseen. And so sometimes you'll hear Amen Ra. That's the unseen and seen creator, right? And Jay Electronica, he has a really fly, what's the song? Letter to Falcon. And in that song, he ends all three of his verses towards the end with a similar cadence that ends with no one can stop your progress, and unknown forces move some known objects. That's magic. That's spirit. When you can tap into the ethers, when you can tap into the all, when you can tap into the unseen, and then you can bring that which isn't near yet closer to you, or you can move that which is too close further away, right? Because you have the blessings, you have the gift, you have the power of the unseen to help you, right? Being spiritual, is it being intellectual? Absolutely. Is it being emotional? Absolutely. We'll talk about that. Is it being physical? Absolutely. But is spirituality simply a physical thing? No, it is not. Is it a deterioration of the physical for the sake of the spirit? Absolutely not. That's an imbalance, and that's not living in harmony. That's not living in ma'at, and that'll actually deteriorate your ability to spiritually progress, right? Imagine needing to be still and meditate for 8 hours in a state of trance. Physically, that takes a lot. And so if you're very weak and feeble, you might not be able to last through deep states, right, of trance, deep work, where you need endurance, right? You need strength, you need power to do that, right? Is it an emotional thing? Absolutely. Is being spiritual mean being super or hyper emotional? No, right? It's still about balance. And so our emotions, as we're constantly taught in the Temple of Anu, are wonderful servants, but they're terrible leaders, right? My emotions should not lead me anywhere, but they should, right? As if I'm driving a car, it's like, ooh, boom, a signal light. I'm like, oh, hey, there's somebody in your blind spot, or like your rear view mirror, or your rear view, beep, 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 back. Or, you got the smart cruise control on. It's like, it's telling you to slow down a little bit. Your emotions should be serving you in that capacity. They're helping your spirit tune in to where it needs to see, what it needs to activate about, right? Like if your quote unquote spidey senses are tingling, that's kind of what our emotions are doing. They're signals and they're directors in that case. Is being spiritual only being intellectual, or solely an intellectual endeavor? No. A lot of times, right, especially in the Kemetic community, our understanding of spirit has almost turned into that of study groups and study sessions. Spirituality, as we're here to talk about today, is first and foremost a living experience, right? Being spiritual is not just about studying and teaching. It is about experiencing and knowing, right? So we talk a lot about, we just use words, and we don't really break down the fact that these words have, right, they have prefixes on them. Experience. X means outside of. So that means we're getting this experience from something, right? If I'm hanging out with you and you did something to me, I had an experience with you. But if I read a book and then I sat down and I meditated on what I read and then I came into knowing of something, that is an experience, right? And spirituality is an experience and an experience simultaneously. It's always both and, right? Are you divine, or are you human? I'm both and some. I'm more than all of that, right? I am greater than the sum. And so being spiritual is about being intellectual, being emotional, being physical, and understanding how to use all of these different layers of ourselves to do, to be, and to become, right? Unknown forces move some known objects. That's magic. I would also say that the unknown forces are only unknown until you begin to build a relationship with them, right? Spirituality, we've talked about prayer, right? We've talked about the power of it. We've talked about the swagger and the art of it. We've talked about living in harmony, pulling ourselves together, getting our house in order. That's what it means. That's what spirituality is. Spirituality is living to better oneself in a purposeful manner. It is about diving deep into oneself to bring out your higher and your highest character, right? It's about living and breathing and commanding. And it's also about having fun, right? When we talk culture, again, James Small said that culture is the expression of one's understanding of their divinity. So if we're spiritual, that means that our expression of our divinity and our culture should be at the forefront. Like our colors should be fly and they should speak for us, right? When you're living as a spiritual person, you walk down the street and then in things you do, people just, what are you doing? Like, what is that on you, right? When people walk around life, what J. Cole and his middle child rap, he was like, the real ones is dying, the fake ones is lit, the game is off balance, I'm back on my ish, right? So like that kind of, when you're living spiritual, people want to know like, yo, like what are you on? What is that? Why is your flavor different? Why is your, you know what I mean, your seasoning is different. I can tell we're not the same. And I'm wanting to know where that gap is, right? We are standing next to each other and they feel the gap. That means they feel the unknown force between us. They can feel infinity, that there's a difference, and not that it's an unreachable difference, but it's not something they can go buy and put on. They know that's something they got to go inside and bring out, right? And so spirituality is loving oneself, right? Because if you don't love yourself, you can't keep your force animating. Spirituality, in short, is really about power. It's about being comfortable in our power, right? Like, are you afraid that you can move a mountain? I'm not, right? Are you afraid that you can ask that thing to disappear and it will disappear? I am not. Are you scared of the fact that what you say comes into being? I am not. And as a result of that, right, my spiritual practice has tremendously deepened. And that came with attracting a spiritual community, because being spiritual also means being a part of a collective, right? We are on a planet with 7 billion people. You did not come here as a spirit on a planet of 7 billion people to be solo dolo. Solo, like, nah, that's not what we're doing. We're here to enhance our collective learning and power. You know what I mean? One person doing something, wonderful. 2 people doing it, excellent. 3 or more, you begin to have a power that you're eventually going to start being able not to calculate, right? Because how things compound and how things exponentially build, you're bringing in forces that don't exist. Because now when you have a gathering of more than a few humans in the room, you're bringing ancestors along, right? Now, with those ancestors, we're bringing along higher energies. We're right. There's a spiritual hierarchy, and so when we're talking spirituality, we're talking those who are living, myself. But I'm also talking, like I said, my ancestors, so those who came before me. But I'm also talking about those Africans and those beings yet to be born. I'm thinking of my children who are not here, my loved ones, and by loved ones, literally like those who in my family who I will never meet, generations after me. I'm thinking about them now, and I'm asking for their assistance in what I'm doing too, right? Because when we're talking about, I need to tap into the future, I have generations of family who are going to come into the future who are waiting to be brought into the future. And I can speak to those spirits and those energies now. What are you needing me to bring into? What are you needing me to build now for you to come into the world later with, right? Like those, it's that type of communication, right? We're dealing with living life, self now. We're dealing with ancestors, those who came before us. We're dealing with those Africans yet to be born. And now we're dealing with Neter, we're dealing with God and the Netzeru. And so spirituality is about power and magic, which is another way of saying living with purpose and confidence, right? Being true to your breath, being true to your word. And like I said, when you do that, you build a relationship with unknown forces. And when you build relationships with unknown forces, you don't have anything that can stop you except for yourself, right? You keep your resonance up, you keep your vibrations high, you keep your frequency pure. And when you make noise, people will hear it, things will move, and your life will be sweet. And so, yeah, my week, I've been recovering, right, from sickness, because I haven't been wholly taking care of my own spiritual body. And that happens from time to time, right? Does being spiritual mean that you never get sick? Nah. But being spiritual does mean that you should recognize your sickness as having spiritual sources, right? Like the sickness is just a sidification. Sidification? What? It's just a side effect of some type of spiritual ramification. And for me, right, I had to realize that, like, hey, man, you're not feeding yourself properly. And so by disrespecting the physical while going outside and it's 60 degrees one day and then 20 degrees the next, and you're not eating properly, now I've opened myself up to things. And I've opened myself up to what? Dis-ease, to an uneasiness has been brought into my body. And now I had to move through that, right? I had to drink my teas. I had to drink my floral and my herbal essences. I had to get my rest. I had to drink my water and have my fluids, right? I needed to get back spiritual so I could retain the power that I have over this temple, right? When you got the flu, when you got the cold, when you got any kind of sickness, you have viruses in your body. You are not the ultimate commander of your temple at that moment because you've let something in. And so that doesn't mean that you'll never not be the commander again, but that also means the thing you let in, you need to flush out, right? I wasn't being a proper steward of my garden this past week. And as a result of that, I had 3 or 4 days where I needed to get things back together. So we are solid now. We are up, as always, moving godly and spiritual. So as you move through this week, think about for yourself in what ways you haven't been living a spiritual life, right? If you know that you're a spiritual being and that you're having a human existence, ask yourself, why aren't you always moving with spirit? Why aren't you always thinking about the collective? Why are you not treating your mind, body, and spirit as a part of a divine whole, instead of moving every day as though you're just one piece of a puzzle? Yeah. With that being said, I'm a Hassas, Afrosynthesis. I'm going to see y'all next week. So it is, and so shall it be.